Looking for an EHR that's built for the way therapists work? From automated scheduling and billing to customizable notes and treatment plans, Simple Practice gives you everything you need right at your fingertips. Learn more at simplepractice.com.
Looking for expert speakers for your next event? Curt and Katie Vernoy, that's me, deliver engaging workshops on clinical, legal, ethical, and business topics. Give your audience practical tools to thrive as modern therapists. Learn more at therapyreimagined.com.
You're listening to the Modern Therapist Survival Guide, where therapists live, breathe, and practice as human beings. To support you as a whole person and a therapist, here are your hosts, Curt and Katie Vernoy.
Welcome back, Modern Therapists. This is a Modern Therapist Survival Guide. I'm Curt with Katie Vernoy, and this is the podcast for therapists about the things that go on in our practices, things that go on in our professions. And we've recently had an interview with Lynn Grodsky and Margaret Wernberg about some of the concepts around how one would go about ending their practice, getting towards retirement, leaving behind a career that people love. And we had kind of just in the luck of timing of things, had one of our friends and former podcast guests, Ofra Obejas, also come to the end of her practice and retirement and being able to add to the stories that go on in the modern therapist pantheon of the universe, the library that we have. And so we wanted to have Ofra on and talk about her experiences and her thought processes. And this is less of a how to retire and more of a this actually happens. And these are the stories that go along with it. So thank you so much for joining us again, Ofra.
Pleasure to be here.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I think there's a lot that we can reflect on at the end of our career. And I know you and I have had several conversations, both kind of in our email exchanges that I love, as well as when we can get together for coffee to really talk about the struggles of being a therapist. So I'm really looking forward to your reflections as you've finished up your career as a therapist. But before we get to that conversation, I want to talk with you about who are you and what are you putting out into the world?
Well, like you said, I'm a retired. I'm a retired LCSW, and I just closed my practice after 20 years as a therapist. And it was not planned. It was abrupt. One day, I just gave my clients a 3 months notice, and 3 months later, I had my last session. You usually have experts on, as you mentioned, the experts on how to retire, and I'm not here as an expert. I'm here as a cautionary tale, I hope. More of an expert of what not to do if you don't want to run out of gas. Like I just one day found that the tank was empty. And I hope to be as candid as I can because I don't think I can be canceled because I already canceled myself. So we're good.
What you're putting out into the world is nothing and hopefully enjoying it.
I am loving it. I had somebody who told me nobody can say that you retired a day too soon.
So normally when we have guests on, we have a little bit of back and forth where we send questions and have kind of a rough outline of what we're going to follow. We have kind of the traditional questions that Katie and I ask at the top of the episodes here, but I just want to dive into your story today. You've been in contact with us. You've emailed us after a number of our episodes. We've gotten to know you and your reflections on a lot of things. So I guess my question is really just, what happened?
Well, I have been trying to find out and asking myself the same question and hope that once I did retire, I would have a very clear answer. I have several answers, and they all have to do with how I started and designed my career and things that went along the way that I didn't watch out for, as well as things that happen to everybody. So one very obvious thing is death by 1,000 cuts. You know, nobody thinks about the day-to-day of what it's going to be like to do this work. And we always have to start working for somebody else. We call it the burnout track for a reason. I don't think I can say new things except that I worked in 3 community mental health agencies, and each time myself and my coworkers were trying to discern if the agency was more toxic then it was insane, or the other way around. And usually both categories were a winner. And some people decide to leave the field after working in an agency like that. And I thought, no, it was just the wrong implementation. I'll start private practice. And it was a calling. It was what I thought was I was meant to do in the world. You always ask your guests, what do therapists get wrong? And I want to say we got a lot right. I can quote a lot of celebrities who credit therapy with changing their lives. And I would add not just life changing, but life saving. And I certainly know that I have changed some of my clients' lives, not everybody, but I have wonderful letters from clients who tell me exactly how I changed their life. All the more sad that I got to a point where I just cannot continue to do it one more day. The death by 1,000 cuts, I think that we all know it. It's the trying to collect fees. It's the continuing education that we have to do, the never-ending expenses, the ongoing correspondence with the IRS. I have this vision on my deathbed that people ask me, what are your last words that you want to leave the world? And I would say, tell the IRS I'm going to pay that last thing. I just came back from vacation and it was another letter from the IRS and just insurance claims. Whether or not you're in network with insurance, a client sent a claim for reimbursement, you're going to get audited. I've been subpoenaed. And not to mention the constant scheduling and rescheduling by clients, sessions that start late and run overtime, and the notes, the so long story short, too late, death by 1,000 cuts.
When I'm listening to you, I hear the meaning and purpose that you found in work, that you have these amazing clients who have made big changes, who have done a lot to be able to improve their lives, save their lives, all of those things. And yet the death by 1,000 cuts really seems like all of the other stuff got in the way. It didn't matter how meaningful the work was. What's the solution? Maybe I'm jumping too early to solutions, but what do you think that you could have done differently or that therapists get wrong about that?
No, that's the question in everybody's mind. So many therapists keep saying, I'm burnt out, I don't know what to do about it. And our field does not do a very good job of addressing burnout or identifying what real self-care is. So just to backtrack a little bit, I'll say that a lot of times we are not conscious of how much the work takes away from us. We know that therapy is about the relationship, right? That's a no-brainer. How many more studies do we need to see that say the most significant factor in the effectiveness of treatment is not whether it was CBT or DBT or IFS therapy or ASS therapy. It's the relationship with the therapist. And yet so many training programs completely ignore it and look at the relationship as a customer service transaction. The therapist delivers an intervention, the client responds to the intervention, and that really leaves out the understanding that we are in a relationship and it has two directions. We do get impacted by our clients. How can we sit in and day out, hour after hour, and not be impacted by their pain, their suffering? Or if a client decides to do some reenactment and use us as a punching bag, do we not feel abused? And this day in and day out without being taken care of, we take care of it by saying, oh, this is counter-transference, so we need to manage it. Like, we're not strong enough if we get impacted by our clients. And I have to tell you that what I found out, that without addressing it, a therapist has a shelf life. And I found out exactly what my shelf life was, and it was 20 years. And I've seen therapists with a shelf life of 2 years who transition, pivot to being more coaches or doing courses, but they can't keep doing it after 2 years. Or people who sort of turn off the emotional part of their practice and just keep, they use compassion, they use active listening, but they're not really engaged emotionally with the client. And I have to say that one of the hardest times in my practice was the last 3 months when I had nothing left in the tank and I still had to deliver 60 sessions and I did not phone them in. I did them all the way I would do them. I gave good termination, but the toll that it took on me, I was just like nothing left, completely numb, depleted, and I can't say in enough ways. I ran out of runway. I was just done. And I think that our profession does fail to prepare us for that emotional reality of the work.
As a therapist, your time is precious, and Simple Practice helps you protect it. Their new AI-powered note taker creates structured progress notes in minutes, so you can wrap up sessions and move on with your day. Easy-to-use billing features take the hassle out of getting paid, even when insurance is involved.
Another great perk? Scheduling is simple for you and your clients with unlimited automated appointment reminders. Make the most of every day with an all-in-one practice management solution that lets you focus on the work that matters most, connecting with your clients. Join over 225,000 practitioners who trust Simple Practice to keep their day running smoothly. Start today at simplepractice.com. Now, a very cynical view of this would just be, why didn't you engage in more self-care? Why didn't you just pick some sessions to phone in a little bit and just kind of ride through a rough patch?
I wish I could with the phoning in. I can't.
It's against Ofra's nature to
it's
phone
against my
anything
nature.
in.
Right. It's against. Thank you. You're so kind. I couldn't do it. But self care. No, I hear the question, and what we describe as self care is usually something that could be scheduled in at the end of the week and kind of put in the bank as credit. Like I'll have a massage at the end of the day Friday, and that will take me over to the rest of the week. That's not realistic self care. If I had a session and I work more with children and with adults, where one client just wrecked the room and threw sand in my eyes, and 5 minutes after that, I got to go to the bathroom and go to the next one, I'm dysregulated. I need to do self care right then and there. I cannot go on and say, well, I'll have a massage on Friday, I'll have yoga later, I'll do a kale smoothie for lunch. That's one of the biggest myths of self-care is that something could be done later and something that can last. And okay, I'm good for the week. You're not good for the week. A client just threw a ball in my face. I'm not good. I don't care what I did 5 minutes earlier. I do hear the question, Curt, why didn't you do anything? And that is,
I guess I was trying more to poorly reflect how a lot of our field reacts to when we reach some of these feelings that you're talking about. I mean, there's a lot that goes on in our field that is somebody in your position. This is an individual failing on your part that you aren't doing enough for yourself. And you should be able to sustain this because we all know therapists that are working until they're 70, 80, 85, 90 years old and they can do it. So why can't you? And really, I guess maybe a more helpful way of asking this question is you saw something in yourself that saw that it was not worthwhile to continue this grind. And I've seen your comments and heard reflections of Katie's conversations with you secondhand for Katie over the years and have a lot of respect for how professionally you take yourself in your practice. If you can't do it, what's the hope for the rest of us?
oh, well, you don't know me well enough because, and again, reflection, what happened to me? How did this happen? I realized that I did not put myself as an enough of a priority, that I was trying to act like a superwoman, that I can just do it and do it and do it and not pay attention to my own feelings and my own needs. You had another guest on your podcast, Laura Reagan of the Trauma Therapy Network. And what she discovered when she was feeling burnt out, she said that she went to her own therapy, and her therapist said, "You are not taking time to feel your own feelings." And Laura Reagan closed her direct practice, and she's doing a podcast and Trauma to Therapy Network, but not one-on-one clients. And she worked with trauma. You can only do that for so long without taking a lot of time for your own feelings. My bandwidth got a lot smaller in the last couple of years, and I really should have looked at what I'm able to do and reduced my caseload. It wasn't very high, but realistically, I could not see more than 2 clients a week. And I did not honor that need for myself. And I did see more than 2 clients. I had a very difficult time breaking off relationships with clients. I tried to convince parents to graduate their children, and they just wouldn't. I I begged clients to terminate, and they wouldn't. And I really did not find a good way to say I need to reduce the caseload because I did not take care of my own feelings. The stress is added up, and poor boundaries. I'm the first person to identify myself as having very poor boundaries, allowing clients to access my my devices, text, phone, emails 24/7. Not that I would respond 24/7, but the mental load is being taken once you see the message. Getting endless requests to have clients ask me to be their secretary. What time are we meeting? Can you give me your address again for my Uber driver? Well, we're meeting today. What time? It's like, get a calendar. You schedule. What is that? Acuity scheduling. And I had always tried to be more understanding. We're always, endlessly available and endlessly compassionate. And I was taught in graduate school that you are the container. You never abandon a client, no matter what. And even if they can't pay you, that's not a justification to abandon a client. And they're just bonkers things that they told us in graduate school and then in subsequent supervision. And I just did not heed my own call of, you're just not a superwoman. And I guess you could call it hubris, you can call it pride, or just kind of a learned habit that I have to not worry about it. I can plow through. And so it turns out that because of my own inability to set boundaries and my own ignoring of my needs, I've reached the end of the runway.
When you talk about being endlessly available, the container, not being able to terminate clients unless they are ready, or all of the responsibilities that we hold as therapists, I feel like there's maybe arguments being had, I don't know the right word, where we as therapists either go to the radical self-care. I'm going to have, 72-hour cancellation policies. If someone sneezes wrong, I'm going to terminate them if they whatever, right? There's that pushback. And then there's, I think, where Curt and I sit a little bit more of what are the ethics? What are the laws? What are the things that are being said? How do we honor those responsibilities? And I think Curt and I have even had arguments on the podcast about where that line is, where the line from responsibly upholding the ethics and duties of being a therapist versus self-care and self-sacrifice, where those things sit along a spectrum. And when I hear you, you were in that place of self-sacrifice, in that place of customer service, in that place of I'm following the highest standard of my profession, and it wasn't sustainable.
It absolutely is not sustainable. And I keep going back to what they did not teach us in grad school. And that's a joke that we have.
Yeah. They didn't teach us a lot of stuff in grad school.
Yeah, they did. Well, we always hear, oh, they didn't teach us about business, how to run a business in grad school. And I always say, because it wasn't a business school, You don't hear people graduate from business school and say they didn't teach us how to be therapists in business school. But they really don't address the toll that it takes to sit in hour after hour, day in, day out for years and not look at the impact that it has on us as people in relationships and referring to any difficulty that we have as something that we need to resolve. I've already mentioned the countertransference or looking at the myths of self-care, and I know I'm repeating things that I've already said, but I got some really strong ideology in grad school because I went to a social work program and a very progressive social work program, and it's we are here to fix the world. Curt, I remember you made a joke about the social work code of ethics that says self-care is something the therapist is responsible for, and like the whole profession that says this is a systemic problem. Why are you responsible for it yourself? But just the guilt tripping into never letting anybody down and never not meeting the needs of the client. If you end up homeless and begging on the street, at least you met the client's needs. I think that there's a lot of failure in our trainings and a lot more conversation needs to be had about how to make the work sustainable. And, we're sort of passing the buck or kicking the can down the road. I'll let the clients take it out on me and then I'll sit in session with my own therapist and I'll take it out on them. And what are they going to do? Turtles all the way down. Oh, what are we doing to break this ridiculous cycle? And so people go to a business coaching program, they think that they're going to be happier if they make more money. At least the money will take care of you. But to quote the great philosopher Jerry Seinfeld, if the work is not fulfilling, the money won't be either. And I was telling people I was retiring, why don't you just ask for, raise your fee? Just, have fewer clients and raise your fee. Yeah, because that's really going to solve everything.
Need dynamic, knowledgeable speakers for your next event, training, or conference? Curt Widhelm, that's me, and Katie Vernoy, that's her, bring real-world expertise to every presentation, covering topics like supervision, private practice growth, and therapist burnout. Our workshops are interactive, insightful, and packed with actionable strategies to help modern therapists succeed.
Whether you're planning a team training or a large-scale event, Curt and I deliver high-impact learning experiences tailored to your needs. Book us today. Visit therapyreimagined.com to learn more.
What I'm hearing is a lot of the advice that we have in the field to address some of these problems. Go into private practice, raise your fees, work with clients who are easier, for lack of a better way of saying it. A lot of this common advice that we have in our field isn't meeting some of the fulfillment that you were looking for. And I want to maybe hone in on this a little bit more as far as the passion is gone. Now, I think that there's this paradox that, we get people into this field as, this is a calling, this is a passion. On one hand, you're saying that it shouldn't be this way. It should be something that we take more seriously as what? What's the alternative?
We all hear the saying, follow your passion, do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And the passion can dull after years, especially with the day-to-day difficulties that you really don't expect. If you think you're following your passion, then it's going to be heaven. Day in and day out, you're going to be so happy that you helped people. That's not recognizing how depleting the work can be, how some parts of the work can be hard. I have a saying that I call a part of my practice middle phase hell. When Hey, do you know what I'm talking about? I haven't had new clients come in for a while, and I haven't had old clients terminate, and everybody's in middle phase. And it could be boring. I mean, it's maintenance, it's support. I said to a colleague, if I have to watch one more kid arrange the furniture in the dollhouse, I'm going to stick needles in my eyes. Just it's not that exciting. So there has to be a variety, and we get new certifications. We look into new modalities, and that's wonderful. But the idea that if this is your calling, it's going to be fun. It's going to be still hard day to day, and I would challenge anybody listening. Whether or not they take insurance, when you are on the phone with an insurance company for 2 hours and they keep transferring you from one person to another, and you have to repeat all your contact information every time, if you don't feel like doing some self-harm at the end, I think you're human.
Well, and don't forget, then you all of a sudden get that hang up and you have to start
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, it's like, what just happened? And those are realities, and yeah, there's a lot broken in the mental health field, and never there has been a worse time, in my opinion, to start private practice, because we are competing with forces that a solo practitioner cannot compete with the advertising budget of worse help, or the rulas, headways, and almas that then anybody can use their insurance. And with online therapy, you are in the same pool with everybody who's a therapist in the United States with the inter state pact. Anybody can provide therapy to anybody, and how are you going to distinguish yourself? So it's a tough time, and I know a lot of coaching programs try to sell you the solution, but I haven't found. Personally, I've tried a few, and I haven't found one that was really helpful.
With the business coaching, let's just step there for a second. What are the things that you found especially unhelpful in the business coaching that you've seen for therapists?
Of the myriad things, these programs use a transformational model of WOOP, WOOP. The W is for wishes and wants. What do you want? What do you want? O for outcome. Visualize what the outcome will be when you get what you want. The next O is obstacles. Identify obstacles that would come up. And P, plan on how to resolve these obstacles. But all the programs that I've been in were just whoa. WO. Wish and visualize the outcomes, and completely ignoring obstacles and planning for how to overcome them. And of course, what happens then. If you didn't get the results that some people claim they have, it's your fault for not believing hard enough, for not being clear enough on what you wish for. And, it's sociopathic when you start blaming the people in the program for not believing enough, or, well, yeah, obviously you don't want it bad enough, so it's your fault, and shaming. Curt, I think that you do EMDR therapy. Imagine if a client said to you, I know we've worked on my trauma, but when I get reminders of the trauma, I still get triggered. And you said to them, well, we have identified the self-limiting beliefs that cause you to feel this way, and you just insist on holding on to them. What can I tell you? That would be that is what these programs do. They claim to have found the answer to mindset change, and all you need is mindset change. And to throw another big word out there, it is vulgar positivism. Not toxic positivity, which they bring on with a shovel, but vulgar positivism, which means oversimplifying the idea that there are different elements that go into positivism. There's taken away the human behavior and emotions and saying, oh, we can just boil it down to raise your fee and schedule clients. And there's no such thing as market conditions. And there's, a biracial therapist in the Bay Area can have the same fee as a Christian counselor in Fresno, and nothing else matters. And of course, this is bonkers,
It's totally bonkers.
total bonkers. And, people say, I've raised my fee, I quit insurance, and the phone stopped ringing. well, you just don't believe enough that people will pay your fee. So, write affirmation 2 hours a day instead of 1 hour, and sign up for the next program when we're going to tell you the real secret to mindset change. But I know I've followed people in these programs, and there's a lot of damage when people do quit insurance and they can't pay the rent anymore, not on their office, on their own home. And they end up leaving the program, going back on insurance for lower reimbursement, and just feel like, I must have, something must be wrong with me because I can't get those results that other people say they get. But when I call people, when I've recently had to find a lot of referrals for all my clients, I found out that therapists don't really make what they say they make. So we're
It's
lying
so
to each other.
true.
That is not helping each other at all.
Yeah. I think we have a lot of conversations that reflect on this. I think we'll link to those in the show notes over at mtsgpodcast.com. And I think we keep coming back to this theme of our profession doesn't prepare us, whether it's in grad school or business coaching programs or whatever, or the philosophy that this should be a calling, and if you just have the right mindset, everything will be fine. And it really comes to these individual solutions of, I've got to figure this out. I've got to figure out how to be better. If I can't do this, I've done something wrong. And even in some of our conversations, Ofra, you've talked about, I failed. This was my failure. And I've pushed back. No, it's not. Like I've really wanted to try to get to this place of what is the systemic solution, if there even is one. Because to me, no matter what my mindset is, there's still the piece that made me me. I care about people. I want to help them. And I have all of my flaws and foibles that potentially mean that I'm going to be a people pleaser with my clients periodically, or at least feel it. Maybe I won't act on it, but that mental load. And so is there a systemic solution to support clinicians, or are there things that you think would be helpful for clinicians who want to navigate this maybe better than you did?
Obviously, I stand by my claim that I failed because I have not figured it out. I did not find a way out of having to just shut down my practice. And I know this might sound cynical to new people who are listening. I'm saying there are ways to avoid burnout, and I'll just say it very, very succinctly. Burnout, in a nutshell, is a mismatch between what you need to do your job and the resources available to you, whether it's time or support or equity or recognition or whatever. And mostly for me, it was values. When there was a mismatch between my values and when I worked in agencies, what they were asking me to do that went against my values, and in my own private practice when I was working against my values. So the answer to burnout or to avoid burnout isn't to become a content creator or an entrepreneur, which we can absolutely do, but that is not the answer to burnout, or take a vacation. Because after the vacation, you'll come back. The answer is to look at, what are my values, and is my job aligned with these values? Am I doing work that reflects my values? And I should have much earlier on really reduced my caseload. And, easy for me to say, maybe I didn't need the money. Maybe I had other ways to make money. And so many therapists have side hustles. So, which great for all of us. I was a teacher, a supervisor, a consultant. And, we all do a lot of different things so that we don't have to have a caseload that is more than we can manage. I believe caseloads need to be very small, and the harder they are, the smaller they need to be. It is not sustainable to have a heavy, complex, big practice, heavy, complex cases. I worked with children. It is very dysregulating to work with children and with the whole family system. It's complex. It's more people, and I don't know a therapist who works with children who could do it for more than 20 years. I have not heard of anybody who could sustain that. That is just too much. But, we think of caseloads as 20 clients a week, 16 clients a week. And for me, just to honor what my needs were, how to look at my own values and what I could do and what I could bring in, it should have been a lot smaller than that. And do I call myself a therapist if I only see 4 clients a week? That's a question that everybody should ask themselves. What is it for you? What is your identity? What are you trying to do? So my failure was failure to recognize that I was doing more than I could, that I could sustain. And that would be my answer to everybody. Look at what your values are. Look at what you can sustain, and don't do something just because you're told to. I know you had guests on your show that looked at supporting clients and having a caseload of 30. And you also had pushback from listeners saying, I don't think that they're going to support me in having 30 clients. I don't believe that they can do that. So yeah, so good for new people coming in and saying, no, I will not have 30 clients. I don't care what my agency is telling me to do.
For those people who their various responsibilities in life do push them up against their values, people who need to pay rent, who have bills, who have student loans, what would you tell them with the wisdom that you've come to at this point in your life and your experiences?
Again, easy for me to say, but I would also say that I was working in one mental health agency, community mental health agency, where I was quitting, and another person told me, oh yeah, we don't all have a spouse who can support us while we're looking for another job. And I said, I will clean my neighbor's toilets and not have this job. So I don't care what I need to do. That there are side hustles that use the knowledge, and everybody can find their own. And of course, there's so many with our therapy license. And I don't know what to say about the low pay of the one-to-one therapy. And I think nobody has found a solution for that. There's the intensives, the emergency intensives, but how many people can you have who come every weekend pay $5,000 for the weekend? I mean, that runs its course. I don't have an answer other than here's how not to burn yourself out.
It feels like a maybe not unsolvable problem, but it is kind of an unsolvable problem. There's looking elsewhere for income to stabilize, whatever that is. It could be a job as a bank teller, right? Like who knows what that other job is? It can be something that is consistent, lucrative, or even just enough to be able to pay the bills. There's figuring out how to create a caseload that maybe can be larger and not having those deep, intense cases. It's hard to feel hopeful in the current environment with insurance premiums probably doubling for people, with a lot of potentially parity or benefits that are going to go away. So there's not even the, hey, I'll just be a therapy mill and see 20, 30, run-of-the-mill anxiety, depression clients from insurance. So I don't think I have a question because I feel like it's just a comment about the state of the world. And I just want to honor that you did what you could and just hit a wall and had to leave, and you did it in the best way that you could. For your own particular situation, how did you come to I need to retire versus I need to take a sabbatical, or I need a long vacation, or I need to get a new certification, or I need to lower my caseload? How did you get to that decision that retirement was the only answer?
For about 5 years, I've played around with what if I have a different population? What if I see more people in the morning and less in the afternoon? Fewer days, more days. It's, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah.
And I realized it's not about that. It's about the day-to-day work. It's about the dysregulation that happens with the intensity of my cases and the number of cases that I have. And I realized that I can't do it anymore when I have good sessions and clients said, this was a breakthrough for me, or, the things that you hear. It's like, yeah, good session. And I felt like saying, good for you. And I don't care. I am completely numb. I'm happy for you. I'm happy that I facilitated it, and it doesn't make me feel anything. And I'd rather do anything else that I'm doing right now, like continue gardening or reading a book or doing my stupid puzzles, than going to a client session. So, maybe this is time.
Got it.
You are not venturing into the coaching space and telling people all of the answers to fix all of the problems that you've identified, but you are offering something else. Can you share what it is that you're willing to do?
Of course, if this conversation inspired anybody and they want to continue talking with me, I will be happy to have a conversation, and who knows what is going to come out of it. And I did shut down my professional email, but just for this podcast, I will create an email address, oframtsg@gmail, where people are welcome to write to me. And if it's within a reasonable amount of emails, I will respond. I'm just happy to continue the conversation. If somebody wants to argue with me, I'm happy to listen to all the arguments. And I appreciate you two very much for continuing these conversations, which are not always inspiring and in a kind of a positive way. Oh, look at how great our field is, and how much hope there is. Because I did want to open it up for people who feel like I do, that, yeah, this is a hard field and we do not get the support that we need in just so many ways to do our job well.
And we will include that in our show notes over at mtsgpodcast.com. You can find our show notes over there, follow us on our social media, join our Facebook group, the Modern Therapist Group, to continue on with this and other conversations. And until next time, I'm Curt Widhelm with Katie Bernoy and Ofra Obejas.
Over 225,000 practitioners already use Simple Practice to grow their business and simplify admin tasks that take time away from their clients. Isn't it time your EHR worked as hard as you do? Find out more at simplepractice.com.
Want expert training for your team or event? Katie and I offer engaging workshops with real-world strategies for modern therapists. Visit therapyreimagined.com to learn more and book today.
Thank you for listening to the Modern Therapist Survival Guide. Learn more about who we are and what we do at mtsgpodcast.com. You can also join us on Facebook and Twitter. And please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our episodes.